October 15th, 2024. Austin, Texas. The kind of autumn day that feels like it was borrowed from a movie. Sunlight sharp but golden. The air crisp without a hint of chill. The city wrapped in the kind of calm that makes you believe something extraordinary is about to happen. Inside St. David's Episcopal Church, tucked in the wealthy neighborhood of Westlake Hills, rows of white roses and sprigs of eucalyptus line the pews. The tall neo-Gothic windows filtered the sunlight into soft beams that painted the aisle in shades of ivory and gold. Guests whispered in awe, pulling out phones to capture what everyone assumed would be the perfect fairy tale beginning. And there she was, Maya Carter, just 28, a Boston marketing director who looked like she had stepped straight out of a bridal magazine. Her gown, a Vera Wang masterpiece she had bought with her own savings, hung her figure with understated elegance. The dress shimmered under the light, and her hazel eyes sparkled as if the moment itself had lit them from within. She carried herself with poise, but anyone watching closely might have noticed her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted her bouquet. To the crowd, she was radiant, glowing, and enviably calm. Only she knew that a storm of nerves and secrets churned quietly behind the polished smile. At the altar waited Nasser al-Hadi, a man who seemed born to command attention. 35. Sharply dressed in a navy Tom Ford suit, his hair slicked neatly back, his posture flawless. He was an investment banker, already well known in elite Austin circles, and descended from one of Amman's most prestigious families. To his colleagues from Goldman Sachs, to the business associates who had flown in from Dallas and Houston, and to the Jordanian relatives who had crossed an ocean to attend, Nasser represented success, tradition, and pride. And in that moment, standing under the high stone arches of St. David's, he also looked like a groom who had everything: a beautiful wife, a lavish wedding, and a storybook future. "Look at them," one guest whispered. "What a beautiful couple." The whispers rippled through the crowd like a chorus. His aunt, flown in from Jordan, leaned toward her sister and sighed. "She's so elegant, so radiant." Maya smiled at the words she couldn't quite hear, though she felt the eyes, the admiration, the weight of expectation pressing in from every side. The ceremony unfolded with rehearsed perfection. Pastor Davidson, a longtime family friend of Nasser's, spoke of love that crossed cultures and built bridges between worlds. His voice filled the cavernous church, reminding everyone of the power of commitment, of the beauty in uniting two very different lives into one. When it came time for vows, Nasser's eyes glistened with something that looked like sincerity. "Maya, you have changed my life," he said, his voice low but steady. "You've shown me that love knows no boundaries." Guests dabbed at their eyes, recording every second on their phones. Maya's voice trembled when she answered, "Nasser, with you I finally feel at home. With you, I have found my forever." Applause broke through the church the moment they sealed the words with a kiss. For a brief second, as her lips touched his, she allowed herself to believe it was true, that the past didn't matter, that the secrets buried in Boston couldn't touch her here. Outside, the reception was ready to burst into life. An elegant venue overlooking Lake Austin had been transformed into a fusion of Texas charm and Middle Eastern tradition. Guests sipped champagne beneath chandeliers, while waiters carried platters of brisket spiced with cumin and lamb seasoned with cardamom. Laughter rang out, toasts were made, and the couple was celebrated as a modern symbol of unity. To the perfect bride and groom, a colleague of Nasser's declared, raising his glass. Cheers erupted, and the sound carried out across the lake. Maya smiled, clinked glasses, and played her role flawlessly. She looked every bit the fairy tale bride, polished, poised, adored. But behind the delicate makeup and the sparkle in her eyes, there lingered an unshakable truth she had never confessed to the man now calling her his wife. It was a truth that followed her all the way from Boston, one she had buried beneath a new name and a carefully curated identity. Tonight, surrounded by wealth and tradition, by family and friends who believed in the story of Maya Carter, she felt the weight of that truth pressing harder than ever. As the night wore on and the speeches grew warmer, Nasser reached for her hand, squeezing it gently as though to anchor them both in the glow of the moment. Guests leaned in to watch them dance, whispering about their chemistry, their elegance, their supposed perfection. To them, this was a love story that could do no wrong. To Maya, Every twirl across the polished floor was a reminder of how fragile the illusion truly was. The night closed with sparklers and camera flashes, with cheers that echoed into the Austin hills. The bride and groom disappeared into a sleek black Mercedes bound for 4 seasons. Their future stretched out before them like the glittering city skyline. And though no one else could see it, Maya carried with her more than a wedding dress and a new last name. She carried the gnawing fear that one day her husband would discover the truth she had built her life on. And when that day came, she knew nothing about this fairy tale would survive. Maya Carter had always known her reflection was complicated. Growing up in Roxbury, a Boston neighborhood rooted in black history, she was a daughter of 2 school teachers who had fought hard to instill pride and resilience in their children. Patricia and James Washington believed their light-skinned daughter could accomplish anything, but even they couldn't shield her from the subtle glances and whispered judgments that followed her through childhood. Maya's skin was lighter than her classmates, her hazel eyes a reminder of Irish and German ancestry on her father's side. It made her stand out, not always in ways she understood. By the time she reached high school, Maya learned a painful truth. People treated her differently depending on who they thought she was. When teachers assumed she was white, doors opened a little faster. Opportunities and internships and scholarships seemed to appear out of thin air. But when her heritage was obvious, when her natural curls refused to be tamed, or when her family showed up to events, those same doors quietly began to close. The unspoken message was clear. Success would come easier if she let the world believe she was someone else. That realization grew into a decision the summer before college. With a combination of chemical treatments and flat irons, Maya reshaped her hair into sleek waves. She filed the paperwork to shorten her name, moving from Washington to Carter, a simple, crisp surname that carried none of the history, none of the questions. She even crafted a new story. Her parents, she claimed, had died young, leaving her to be raised by distant relatives. In truth, they were still in Roxbury, still attending the same Baptist church every Sunday, still wondering why their daughter seemed to be slipping away. College at Boston University gave her the chance to perfect the illusion. Surrounded by students from affluent suburbs and private schools, she blended in by omission. She didn't correct professors who assumed she came from an Irish Catholic background. She didn't invite classmates home. And when people asked about her parents, she repeated the script until it felt like memory. Each repetition was a cut, small but sharp, slicing away at the truth of who she was. By the time she entered the advertising world, the transformation was complete. Maya Carter was ambitious, brilliant, and polished. She had the right clothes, the right speech, and the right look for boardrooms filled with men who valued image almost as much as ideas. And for years, it worked. Promotions came. Campaigns carried her name. She gained the respect of colleagues who admired her exotic edge, but never pressed too hard about where it came from. But at night, when the makeup came off and the hair straighteners cooled, the weight of her choices pressed heavily. She missed family dinners in Roxbury, missed the laughter of nieces and nephews, missed the way her mother's hands always found hers in church pews. She told herself it was temporary, that once she built her career, she could bring her family back into the picture. But with every lie, every omission, the distance grew wider. Then came Nasser. Their meeting at a Boston Starbucks was almost cinematic. Him in a suit after a long day at Goldman Sachs, her hunched over a glitching laptop. He leaned in with polite curiosity, offering help, and within minutes they were talking like old friends. He asked questions about her work, her goals, her dreams, and listened with a sincerity that felt disarming. For the first time in years, Maya felt truly seen, though not in the way she wanted. She told herself she would come clean eventually, that the right moment would arrive. But when that moment passed, another came and another. Soon weeks became months, and months became years. Nasser was attentive, charming, ambitious. He introduced her to colleagues, took her to dinners in Boston's wealthiest neighborhoods, invited her to family calls where Arabic mingled with English. At first, his mother's reserved smile over Skype unsettled Maya. But Nasser reassured her. "You're perfect for me," he insisted. And when he proposed by the Charles River, slipping a Tiffany's ring on her finger as the sunset painted the water gold, she said yes before the words of truth could even form on her lips. From that moment on, Her secret hardened into something immovable. How could she tell him now, after 3 years? How could she reveal that her parents were alive, not dead? That her family was in Roxbury, not buried in some suburban cemetery? That she was not Irish Catholic at all, but a black woman who had chosen to erase herself to survive? Every time she rehearsed a confession in her head, fear drowned her courage. Would he leave? Would he see her differently? Would his powerful family reject her outright? So she buried it deeper. She let the wedding plans consume her. She played the role of Maya Carter with such perfection that even she began to wonder where the lie ended and the truth began. But on her wedding night, standing in that luxury hotel suite overlooking the Austin skyline, she felt the walls of her carefully built life pressing in. She sipped champagne, smiled for photos, kissed her husband's cheek. And in the quiet moments, when no one was watching, she felt the weight of the Washington name she had abandoned pressing against her ribs like a heartbeat that refused to be silenced. The secret had become her shadow, always following, always waiting for its chance to step into the light. And deep down, Maya knew shadows can't be hidden forever. The first weeks of marriage felt like stepping into a glossy magazine spread. Nasser's new penthouse in West Austin sparkled with sleek marble counters, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a panoramic view of Lake Austin. He insisted it would be their fresh start, a place to build their life together. At night, they drank wine on the balcony, the skyline glittering below, and Maya let herself believe the fairy tale might hold. She cooked lamb with recipes she learned from his mother, while he teased her for oversalting the rice. In public, he was attentive, proudly introducing her as my wife, Maya Carter, flashing the smile that charmed colleagues and relatives alike. But the fairy tale started to fray almost immediately. What had once been charming attentiveness slowly curdled into scrutiny. "Who were you meeting?" he asked casually after her first freelance project meeting. "What did you talk about? How long were you there?" He began to track her schedule, offering to drive her places she could have easily reached on her own. "Austin can be dangerous for a beautiful woman," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. At first, Maya brushed it off as protectiveness, the natural instinct of a husband. But the frequency of his questions, the sharp edge behind them, began to erode her peace. She had trouble finding steady work in Austin. The reputation she had built in Boston didn't open the same doors in Texas, and her carefully edited resume seemed to matter less in this new circle dominated by long-standing networks. She picked up small projects, grateful for the independence they offered. But even those became difficult under Nasser's watch. He offered her money. Why struggle when I could provide? But she resisted, clinging fiercely to the little autonomy she had left. "It's not about money," she said once, her voice sharper than she intended. "It's about me." He smiled thinly, kissed her forehead, and murmured, "Everything that's yours is mine now, Habibti. We're one." Their social calendar was relentless. Nasser thrived on lavish dinner parties and charity galas where oil magnates and real estate developers traded stories over whiskey. Maya became a fixture at his side, her role reduced to smiling, listening, and fielding endless questions about her background. "You look so exotic." One woman cooed at the Austin Country Club, her diamond bracelet glittering as she swirled a martini. "Where are you really from?" Maya's throat tightened. "Boston," she answered flatly. "No, but originally," the woman pressed. Nasser laughed, sliding his arm possessively around her waist. "She has Irish roots. Too much sun, that's all." The table laughed politely, but Maya's stomach twisted. That night, in the car ride home, silence pressed between them like a wall. At family gatherings, the pressure mounted. His cousin's wife asked bluntly when they would have children. "In our culture, family is everything," she said warmly, as though Maya's hesitation was inconceivable. The conversation shifted quickly to fertility specialists, as if Maya's silence was an admission of guilt. On the drive back, Nasser grew pensive. "They're right," he said softly. "Maybe you should see a doctor, just to be sure." Maya's jaw tightened. "Everything is fine. I don't need a doctor." But his tone made clear it was not a request. Small boundaries began to vanish. One evening, Maya caught him rifling through her purse, her private letters spread across the counter. "What are you doing?" she demanded, Her voice trembled with both anger and fear. He didn't even flinch. Sorting our mail. We're married, Maya. No secrets. The way he said it chilled her. The word family on his lips sounded less like unity and more like ownership. The once romantic calls to his mother turned into veiled interrogations. She asked if Maya cooked the meals properly, if she respected tradition. Nasser relayed every detail back to her, as though his wife were a project to be graded. Maya smiled politely on video calls, but inside she burned with humiliation. Each word of praise or criticism from his family tightened the leash around her neck. By late November, Maya began to notice subtle intrusions everywhere. Her laptop's browser history had been rearranged after he borrowed it to fix a glitch. Her phone charger cord was slightly out of place. Even her makeup bag seemed inspected, lipsticks uncapped and recapped with unusual precision. At first she doubted herself. Was she paranoid? But then she found her diary tucked back into a drawer upside down, something she never would have done. The truth was unavoidable. He was searching, digging, hunting for pieces of her she had tried so desperately to bury. At night, lying beside him, she stared at the ceiling while he slept, his arm draped heavily across her waist. To anyone else, it might look tender, protective. To her, it felt like a shackle. She thought of her family in Roxbury, the warmth of Sunday services, her sister Jasmine's laugh, her father's steady voice telling her she could be anything. That life felt like another world, unreachable now. She wondered how long she could keep pretending, how long before the fragile scaffolding of her lies collapsed under the weight of his suspicion. The view from the penthouse balcony was breathtaking, rolling hills stretching into the horizon, the lake sparkling in the sunlight. But for Maya, it was becoming a gilded cage. And inside that cage, the man she had married was no longer her charming rescuer from a Boston cafe. He was something darker, something dangerous, and she was beginning to realize that her secrets weren't the only ones in this marriage. It happened on a gray December morning, the kind of day when Austin's sky hangs low and heavy with rain. Maya was in the kitchen, scrambling eggs and trying to ignore the silence that had grown sharper between them. Nasser walked in holding his laptop, his face pale, his lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't sit. He didn't smile. He just set the computer down on the counter and said, in a voice that felt colder than the weather outside, "Sit down." Her stomach dropped. Something in his tone told her this wasn't about breakfast. She wiped her hands on a towel and slowly sat, eyes flicking to the screen. And then she saw it. A Boston Globe article from the year before, Rising Stars in Marketing. There, in the middle of a group photo, was a younger version of herself. The caption didn't say Maya Carter. It said Maya Washington. Her curls were natural, tighter, darker, her skin glowing under the lights of the event. Nasser's voice sliced through the silence. "Who is that?" His eyes never left her face. Maya felt her breath catch. The walls of her carefully built life trembled. "That's me," she whispered. "Washington," he said flatly. "Not Carter. And you look different." His tone wasn't curious. It was accusatory, dangerous. She closed her eyes. There was no running anymore. "Yes, it's me." For a moment, he didn't move. Then he stood so quickly the chair screeched against the tile. "You're black." The words came out as though he had to force them past his teeth, like they burned his tongue. "I'm mixed," Maya said softly. "My mother is African American. My father had Irish and German roots." Nasser let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Mix? You lied to me for 3 years. You told me your parents were dead. You told me you were Irish Catholic. You created an entire identity out of nothing." She rose, reaching for him, desperate to steady the unraveling. "Nasser, I'm still the same person. The woman you fell in love with." He recoiled as if her touch were poison. "The woman I thought you were. You tricked me. Do you know what this means for me? For my family? For my reputation?" The word reputation cracked like a whip, and she finally understood. This wasn't about love anymore. This was about image, pride, control. He snatched his phone, dialing with shaking hands. "Who are you calling?" she asked, panic edging her voice. "My lawyer. You committed fraud. You married me under false pretenses." She lunged forward, grabbing his arm. Nasser, please. I have legal documents. My name change was official. Everything is legitimate. He yanked free, shoving her so hard she stumbled into the kitchen island. Legal or not, you lied. You made a fool of me. And then the storm began. He tore through the apartment like a man possessed. Drawers slammed open. Closets ripped apart. Her purse dumped on the floor. Where are they? He shouted. Where are your real papers? Your birth certificate? She stayed silent. She had destroyed those documents years ago. He grabbed her laptop, ripping it open with violent precision. His fingers flew across the keys until he found what he wanted. Old emails, photos, family messages. Jasmine Washington, he read aloud. Your sister. Patricia and James Washington, your parents. Roxbury. A black family from the ghetto. Roxbury isn't a ghetto, Maya said quietly, tears burning her eyes. It's a working-class neighborhood. My parents were teachers. He closed the laptop and looked at her with a disgust so raw it stole her breath. You disgust me. You made me marry a black woman. The words cut deeper than any knife. She had always feared this moment, but hearing it out loud, seeing the hatred on his face, was worse than every nightmare. Get out, he said finally, his voice steady, deadly calm. Get out of my apartment. Get out of my life. Nasser, please, she begged. We can talk about this. We can fix it. Talk. He exploded, his voice echoing off the walls. Talk about what? How you deceived me. How you humiliated me. Our entire marriage is a sham. He shoved her purse into her chest, hurled her coat at her, and dragged her toward the door. This is my apartment, too, she cried. I pay rent. This apartment belongs to my company, he snapped. You pay me rent, and now you're out. The door slammed in her face. The lock clicked. She stood in the hallway, rain lashing against the windows, her belongings scattered around her feet. On the other side of the door, she could hear his muffled voice. Khalil, I need to talk to you. Sit down. It's about Maya. Her phone buzzed with his number again and again, then messages. You liar. You fraud. Everyone will know what you are. She gathered what she could and stumbled out into the December storm. The city that had once promised her freedom now felt hostile, foreign. She ducked into a cafe, ordered coffee with trembling hands, and called the only person she trusted, Talia Brooks. When Talia answered, Maya broke. He knows, she sobbed. Nasser knows, and he hates me. What are you talking about? Knows what? He found out. I'm black. He kicked me out. He's going to ruin me. There was a pause on the other end. Then Talia's voice, steady and fierce. Stay where you are. I'm coming to Austin. But even as she clung to that promise, Maya knew the storm was only beginning. Nasser wasn't just angry. He was a man with power, pride, and connections, and he was already preparing to destroy everything she had left. The rain had been falling all day, a steady drizzle that slicked the sidewalks and blurred the Austin skyline into streaks of gray and silver. Maya left the cafe just after dusk, clutching her coat tightly around her. Talia had promised to arrive the next morning, but tonight she was still alone, drifting from one cheap motel to another, hoping Nasser wouldn't find her. But he already had. She didn't see the black Mercedes until it rolled up behind her, engine purring low. By the time she turned, he was there, leaning against the car, cigarette smoke curling around his face. Nasser looked different. His tie loosened, hair damp from the mist, eyes wild in a way that made her pulse spike. Hello, Maya Washington, he said, savoring the name like poison on his tongue. Her knees threatened to give. Please, Nasser, don't do this. He flicked the cigarette into a puddle and stepped closer, his shoes splashing in the rain. You lied to me. You made me a joke. Do you know what they say in whispers now? That I married a fraud. That I, his voice broke into a bitter laugh, slept with a black woman pretending to be white. Maya tried to back away, but his hand shot out, gripping her arm hard enough to bruise. You hurt me, he hissed, his breath sharp with alcohol. Now it's my turn. She wrenched free and ran, feet slapping against wet pavement, her heart pounding in her throat. She didn't even realize where she was headed until the lake appeared ahead, its dark surface rippling under the drizzle. Lady Bird Lake at night was usually alive with joggers and cyclists, but the storm had driven most people home. Tonight it was deserted, except for her and the man chasing her. Nasser caught up at the stone railing, grabbing her by the hair and yanking her backward. She screamed, her voice swallowed by the wind and water. He spun her around, slamming her against the cold stone. Her vision blurred as the back of her head connected with the railing. "You think you can shame me?" he shouted, shaking her. "You think you can walk away and leave me humiliated?" Maya clawed at his wrists, desperate to breathe. "I never wanted to hurt you," she gasped. "I loved you," he sneered, his face inches from hers, rain dripping down his jawline. "Loved me? You tricked me. You ruined me." With one hand still gripping her, he pulled something from his coat pocket. The faint glow of a street lamp revealed the blade of a kitchen knife, small but sharp, gleaming with menace. Terror froze her blood. "Nasser, please." He pressed the knife against her cheek, cold metal slicing a shallow line across her skin. "See this? With this I'll show you what you really are. A nobody. A nothing." Her body trembled violently, but her voice came out steady, desperate. "You don't have to do this. You can stop right now." But the words didn't reach him. Months of humiliation and anger had boiled over into pure rage. He slapped her hard, her head snapping sideways. "You made me sleep with a black woman," he spat. "Do you know what that means in my world? You made me filth." He struck her again, this time with his fist. She crumpled to the wet pavement, blood seeping from her nose, ribs screaming as his boot connected with her side. The rain mixed with the blood, washing across the stone. Maya's vision blurred. She thought of her sister Jasmine, her parents, of Sundays in Roxbury. She thought of the lie that had brought her here. She thought, with sudden clarity, that she was going to die. Nasser yanked her up by the hair, knife poised at her throat. "This ends tonight," he whispered. And then footsteps, the rhythmic thud of sneakers against wet pavement, a beam of light cutting through the dark. A jogger. Nasser froze. The man slowed, his headlamp illuminating the brutal scene. "Hey!" he shouted, dropping his pace. "What's going on here?" Maya recognized a voice from local news interviews. Dr. Aaron Blake, an emergency physician known for volunteering at community events. He saw the knife, saw the blood, and immediately pulled out his phone. "I'm calling 911. "Stay back." Nasser barked. The knife still pressed to Maya's throat. But Aaron didn't move. His voice was calm, practiced, the voice of someone used to saving lives under pressure. "Let her go. The police are already on their way. Walk away before it's too late." Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder by the second. Nasser's grip trembled, fury battling fear. His eyes darted between Maya, the doctor, and the approaching red and blue flashes. For a moment, Maya thought he might drag the blade across her neck out of sheer spite. Instead, he shoved her to the ground, snarling, "This isn't over. It will never be over." Then he bolted into the night, disappearing into the darkness before Aaron could reach him. Maya collapsed, sobbing, the knife's cold memory still burning at her skin. Aaron knelt beside her, gently checking her injuries with hands both firm and careful. "You're safe now," he murmured. "The ambulance is almost here." Blue lights washed over the scene as squad cars screeched to a stop. Officers leapt out, weapons drawn, scanning the shadows for Nasser. Detective Luis Ortega pushed through the crowd of responders, kneeling next to Maya, his voice quiet but urgent. "Can you tell me what happened?" Shaking, bruised, still bleeding, she told him everything, how her husband had hunted her, cornered her, nearly killed her. Aaron confirmed what he had seen. But by the time they searched the area, Nasser was gone. His apartment was empty, his car abandoned. At Brackenridge University Medical Center, under the harsh glow of fluorescent lights, doctors stitched Maya's wounds while Ortega stood at her bedside, notebook in hand. She recounted it all again, her voice hoarse. And when the detective finally closed his book, the look on his face said what she already knew. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something far darker. The manhunt began before dawn. Detective Luis Ortega stood in the drizzle outside Lady Bird Lake, his raincoat clinging to him as officers scoured the shoreline with flashlights. Nasser al-Hadi had vanished into the night, leaving behind nothing but a bloodied wife, a shaken doctor, and a city on edge. His Mercedes was found hours later, abandoned near a warehouse district. The doors unlocked, the keys tossed carelessly under the seat. It was a first sign Nasser wasn't running in panic. He was planning. News of the attack spread quickly. Morning broadcasts painted Maya as the battered bride, while others whispered about deception and lies. The banker's wife who wasn't who she claimed to be. The story was easy tabloid fuel. Wealth, marriage, betrayal, race, violence. And Nasser's polished image clashed brutally with the monster Maya had described. Public opinion fractured. Some called him a criminal. Others, disturbingly, framed him as a man pushed too far. Maya watched it unfold from her hospital bed, bandages across her face, ribs bound, her body aching with every breath. Talia Brooks sat beside her, scrolling through social media posts. "They're twisting it," Talia muttered. "They're making him the victim." Maya's throat tightened. That's what he wants. He knows exactly how to play people. She wasn't wrong. While police issued alerts and roadblocks, Nasser had slipped into Austin's underbelly. At a seedy motel off the interstate, he shaved the edges of his beard unevenly, pulled on thrift store clothes, and vanished into anonymity. His once immaculate grooming gave way to a rough, haunted exterior. To strangers, he looked like a drifter, but inside his cluttered motel room, the obsession was thriving. Detectives would later describe it as a stalker's shrine, pinned to the wall. Printouts of Maya's freelance projects, receipts from cafes she visited, photographs taken without her knowledge. He had followed her from motels to job interviews, recording times and places in a meticulous diary. Every move she made, every friend she contacted, became another entry in his spiral. "She will pay," he wrote in jagged script. "This isn't over." Detective Ortega poured over the evidence they gathered from Nasser's abandoned apartment. His destroyed phone, fragments of shredded documents, a burner SIM card. The signs were clear. Nasser had prepared for this. He had hoarded cash, possibly forged documents, even reached out a contact who trafficked in fake passports. Ortega stood before the press, his jaw tight. "We are dealing with a dangerous, obsessive individual. We urge the public to remain vigilant." For Maya, vigilance meant prison of a different kind. Discharged from hospital, she moved into a mid-range hotel under police watch. Talia refused to leave her side, turning the room into a makeshift fortress. Locks were reinforced, cameras installed, emergency numbers taped by the phone. Still, at night, every sound in the hallway made Maya's chest tighten. "I feel like a prisoner," she whispered one evening, staring at the darkened street through the blinds. Talia squeezed her hand. Better a prisoner than a target. The stress wore at them both. Maya struggled to eat. Nightmares dragged her back to the lake, to the knife against her skin, to the way Nasser's voice cracked with hatred. She'd wake shaking, gasping for air, Talia wrapping her in blankets until the tremors eased. Therapy sessions with a counselor arranged by Ortega offered brief relief, but the dread never left. "He promised it wasn't over," Maya told the therapist, her eyes red. "And I believe him." And Nasser made sure she did. One morning, Talia found an envelope slipped under their hotel door. Inside, a photograph of Maya taken just days earlier, walking out of a pharmacy, her hood up, scrawled across it in black marker. "I see you." Police intensified the search, canvassing motels, interviewing informants. Yet each time they thought they had a lead, Nasser was already gone. His background as a banker gave him a network of powerful contacts, and whispers suggested some were shielding him out of loyalty or fear. Meanwhile, the media firestorm raged. Talk shows debated whether Maya's deception justified Nasser's rage. Civil rights groups protested outside the courthouse, demanding the narrative stop vilifying the victim. But online forums seethed with venom, strangers dissecting Maya's past as if it were theirs to judge. She tried not to read them, but the words found her anyway. She lied first. She ruined his life. What did she expect? Each headline made her feel smaller, less believable. "They don't care that he tried to kill me," she said one night, tears slipping down her cheeks. "They only care that I wasn't honest about where I came from." But the police cared. Detective Ortega double patrols near her hotel, rotating unmarked cars outside. He knew men like Nasser, obsessed, humiliated, desperate for control. "He won't stop on his own," Ortega told Talia. "We have to stop him." For Maya, hope came in flickers. A smile from Talia over cheap takeout, the kindness of a nurse who checked on her, the quiet strength she found when she looked in the mirror and saw not a fraud, but a survivor. Yet every flicker dimmed under the shadow of Nasser's promise. This isn't over. And somewhere in a dim hotel room littered with coffee cups and torn photographs, Nasser stared at her image taped to the wall, his eyes burning with purpose. Each siren in the distance made him flinch, but his resolve only hardened. He believed the world had taken everything from him, status, family, pride, and he had only one mission left, to finish what he had started by the lake. By mid-February, Austin was thawing under an unusually warm spell. The sun glinted off the cafe windows in East Austin, where Maya finally dared to sit outside with Talia. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't behind drawn curtains or police tape. She sipped cautiously at her coffee, the steam curling around her face like a fragile shield. "You look better," Talia said softly. "The bruises are fading." Maya touched her cheek unconsciously, nodding, though inside she still carried the echo of every slap, every kick, every whispered threat. 2 blocks away, in a dented white Honda Civic he'd bought for cash, Nasser al-Hadi sat hunched behind the wheel, binoculars pressed to his face. His beard had grown patchy, his eyes sunken, but the fire inside him had not dimmed. It had sharpened. For weeks he had followed, watched, and planned. Today, he told himself, would be the day he erased his humiliation. He waited until Maya stood up to use the restroom. Then, like a predator sensing weakness, he stepped from the car, the kitchen knife hidden under his jacket. His gait was quicker, more erratic than usual. Talia noticed him first. The way he cut to the crowd, eyes fixed, jaw clenched. It was unmistakable. Her stomach plummeted. "Nasser," she whispered, the name spilling out before she could stop it. He heard it. His head snapped up, eyes locking on her. The corner of his mouth curled into something like a smile, but it carried no warmth. He lunged forward, leaping over the low terrace wall with surprising speed. Before Talia could move, his hand clamped around her wrist, the knife flashing as he pressed it against her throat. Gasps erupted across the patio, chairs scraping as customers scattered. "Where is she?" he hissed. "Where's the liar?" The cafe dissolved into chaos. Waiters ducked behind counters. Patrons bolted through the door. Cups and saucers shattered on the concrete floor. Talia froze, her chest heaving, eyes wide as the cold edge of steel dug into her skin. And then Maya stepped back onto the terrace, her heart seizing at the sight. There he was, thinner, dirtier, but more dangerous than ever, holding her best friend hostage. "Let her go, Nasser," Maya said, her voice trembling but loud enough to carry. "I'm here. You want me, not her." His eyes darted, wild and gleaming, until they landed on her. His grip loosened on Talia, then shoved her away with such force she tumbled into a fallen chair. He raised the knife toward Maya. 3 months, he said, his voice breaking. 3 months I've hunted you. 3 months you've mocked me. Maya's pulse roared in her ears, but she forced her body to stay steady. "This doesn't have to end like this. You can walk away." "Walk away?" His laugh was jagged, hysterical. "You destroyed my life. My career, my family, my reputation, all gone because of you." He stalked toward her, the knife slicing the air. "It was you," she shot back, inching backward with every step. "You chose violence. You chose hate. I never wanted this." "You made me love you," he spat, spittle flying. "You made me love a black woman. Do you know what that means to me?" The words cut, but she didn't flinch. "I'm a human being, Nasser, and I loved you for who you could have been." He lunged. She ducked, the knife grazing her blouse, tearing fabric. Her hand grabbed the nearest object, a heavy ceramic planter knocked over in the chaos. With every ounce of strength, She swung it into his temple. The crack reverberated across the terrace. Nasser staggered, blood streaking his forehead, but he didn't fall. His eyes narrowed into pure malice. "Bitch!" he growled, raising the knife again. "Police!" dropped the weapon. The command thundered as Detective Luis Ortega and 3 officers stormed the terrace, guns drawn. Red and blue lights washed across the scene, sirens wailing closer. Nasser spun, knife still in hand, his chest heaving. He looked less like the immaculate banker he once was, and more like a cornered animal. "Stay back," he roared. "This is between us." "Mr. Al-Hadi," Ortega said, his voice calm, measured. "It's over." Drop the knife. Nasser's gaze flicked between Maya, trembling but standing tall, and the circle of officers closing in. His lips moved, barely a whisper first. "If I can't have her," then louder, almost a scream. "No one can." He charged. The world seemed to slow. The glint of the knife, the terror in Maya's eyes, Ortega's voice shouting, "Hold your fire." But the moment stretched too thin. 2 shots rang out, sharp and final. Nasser's body jolted, then crumpled to the floor just feet from Maya. The knife clattered harmlessly onto tiles. For a moment, silence consumed the cafe. The chaos, the screams, the sirens, all dulled under the weight of what had just ended. Maya's knees gave way, and she sank to the ground, shaking, her breath ragged. Talia crawled to her, wrapping her arms tight around her trembling frame. Nasser lay dying, blood spreading across the concrete, his eyes finding Maya's one last time. "I would have loved you," he rasped, "if you had been honest." Her tears blurred everything. "I was honest where it mattered," she whispered back. "I loved you." Then his eyes closed, his chest stilled, and the manhunt was over. The cafe terrace still smelled of gunpowder and rain when the paramedics covered Nasser's body with a sheet. Flashing lights from police cruisers painted the street in frantic color. But for Maya, everything had gone strangely silent. She sat on the curb, knees pulled up, Talia's arm around her shoulders. Her blouse was torn, her face streaked with dirt and tears. But she was alive, and in that moment, survival felt like the only victory she had left. Detective Ortega crouched beside her, his notepad tucked away. His voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "It's over, Maya. You're safe now." She wanted to believe him, but the words didn't feel real. Safety was something she hadn't known for months. Safety had been stolen from her the moment Nasser discovered who she really was. At the precinct later that night, Ortega briefed the press. He didn't flinch from the details. The stalking, the threats, the knife. He called Nasser what he'd become, an obsessive, dangerous man who left his wife no choice but to fight for her life. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras clicked, but for once the headlines weren't hers to carry. They were his. The investigation that followed revealed just how far Nasser had descended. In his motel room, detectives found stacks of photographs, grainy shots of Maya walking into pharmacies, sitting at bus stops, sipping coffee while pretending not to watch the door. Alongside them, spiral notebooks filled with rants. Page after page of his obsession, his fury, his insistence that she had ruined his honor. It was evidence not of betrayal, but of madness. Still, the public split down the middle. Some news outlets framed Nasser as a tragic figure, a man undone by secrets. But others saw him for what he was, a violent abuser who nearly killed the woman he once vowed to love. Civil rights groups rallied outside City Hall, holding signs that read "Survival is Justice" and "No more excuses for violence." For the first time, Maya felt less alone in her truth. Her recovery was slow. Physically, her ribs healed, the bruises faded and the stitches came out. Emotionally, the scars were deeper. Nightmares kept her awake, pulling her back to the lake, the knife, the hatred in his voice. But with Talia beside her, steady, fierce, unwilling to let her collapse, she began to take back pieces of herself. Therapy sessions gave her words she hadn't dared to speak aloud. Coercive control, racialized abuse, survival. Each word was a step toward reclaiming her identity. Weeks later, she accepted a position at a small Austin startup that specialized in diversity and inclusion. The irony wasn't lost on her. After years of hiding who she was, Her career was now built on telling the truth. Her colleagues embraced her story, not as a scandal, but as a symbol of resilience. For the first time in her professional life, she walked into an office without pretending. She was Maya Washington again, and she wasn't ashamed. Her bond with Talia deepened in ways neither had expected. What began as friendship forged in survival grew into something steadier, more intimate. They shared late-night meals over takeout containers, whispered confessions in the dark, tentative laughter that felt like sunlight after months of storms. Maybe, Maya admitted one evening, this was my true love all along. 6 months after Nasser's death, Maya flew back to Boston. Standing in front of her childhood home in Roxbury, she hesitated, heart hammering. The door swung open, and there was Jasmine, eyes brimming with tears, arms open wide. "Welcome home, sister," she said, and Maya collapsed into her embrace. That Sunday, she returned to Baptist church she hadn't entered in years. The pews felt smaller, the air familiar. When the pastor invited testimonies, Maya rose, her voice trembling but sure. She didn't share every detail, but enough. Enough for the congregation to understand the cost of hiding, the danger of shame, the power of truth. "I thought I had to be someone else to be loved," she said, her eyes sweeping across the room. "But love built on lies will never protect you. True love. True love loves you for who you are, not for who you pretend to be." The church fell into silence, then applause, then tears. And in that moment, Maya felt something break free inside her. The chains of fear, of secrecy, of shame, shattered. Justice hadn't come through a courtroom or a jury. Nasser had escaped accountability by dying in a hail of bullets. But Maya had survived, and sometimes survival itself is the greatest justice. On warm summer nights, sitting on her parents' porch with Jasmine's children laughing in the yard, she finally felt free. The shadows of Austin lingered like distant thunder, but the air around her was clear, alive, and hers. For the first time in her life, Maya didn't need to pass as anyone else. She was exactly who she was meant to be. And that, she realized, was a liberation she had been searching for all along.